Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice Radio. So today, I want to show you the very best deck in Japan. Japan had their championships this past weekend, and well, I like to try and be comprehensive in my coverage of the Pokemon trading card game, and regardless of what deck won, I need to show you the winner. If I don't show you the winner of Japan's championships, well, I feel like I'm not doing a terribly thorough job. And I'm going to be honest with you, it was Reshiram and Charizard. The best deck in Japan since it came out. The best deck outside of Japan since it came out outside of Japan. And although I was very much in the camp that thought that Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team GX would take down this tournament this past weekend, unfortunately, for me and my prediction, no, it's Reshiram and Charizard. And look, Reshiram and Charizard is a phenomenal deck. It's got 270 HP, which is huge, and then 4 energy, 230, and then 3 energy, 200, but if you knock it up to 6 energy, 300 goes through any effects on the defending Pokemon. So anything that's trying to block this, there will be a turn where they're just physically not allowed to block. Not to mention the outrage attacks. So if you do a bunch of damage but don't KO, they will be able to KO you with outrage for just 2 energy. Frankly, along with the support, which we'll get to in a moment, this is the best deck in the format. So there's 2 things we can learn by looking at a Japanese winning list of a deck that, quite frankly, a lot of us are already familiar with. Firstly, we can see a phenomenal deck list, potentially the best deck list of the best deck. And secondly, we can have a sneak peek about the couple of cards coming out in Unified Minds, which are going to change how we build and play the deck. So look, Reshiram and Charizard, we've already gone through what other Pokemon did they choose to play. And like so many Charizard and Reshiram decks, they played Jirachi. Jirachi's ability, when it's in the active, you can look at the top 5 cards of your deck, find a trainer card, put it into your hand, Jirachi's now asleep. Which isn't a problem because we play Escape Board, which gives Jirachi free retreat and allows it to retreat when asleep. We're okay with this, ladies and gentlemen. And this is your consistency. This allows you to grab something like that welder that is so important to the deck. Or some kind of switching card or whatever it might be. That choice band to get the last little bit of extra damage. That reset stamp to give your opponent a small hand after they've taken a lead. Whatever it is that you need, Jirachi can help you to find it. It's not terribly unusual to see Jirachi popping up in these Reshiram and Charizard decks. 3 of them here means we're going pretty much all in. But we're also playing Miltank here. Now, Miltank is another card that we do see coming around moderately often in these decks. And Miltank's got an amazing ability whereby when you attach an energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon, as long as Miltank is active, you heal 90 damage from that Pokemon. Well, remember that welder I mentioned earlier? Welder lets you attach 2 fire energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon and then draw 3 cards. And yes, fine. This does mean that you're going to be healing and you won't be able to use outrage as well, but it means you're going to be healing loads. Now, the other thing to point out here is, yes, you do get to heal twice with welder. I know welder's giving you extra energy attachments, but the point here is that you're attaching from your hand. And if you're attaching from your hand, you heal 90. That's what's important here. Yeah, you're using a supporter, but you're healing from your hand. That's moderately important, to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. That's moderately important. We also play 1 copy of Absol. Now, Absol increases the retreat cost of your opponent's basic Pokemon by 1. And as much as this is good for Tag Team GXs, etc., honestly, this is mostly in there for Jirachi. Because now Jirachi's not able to free retreat using a skateboard, and that is absolutely huge. Jirachi is everywhere at the moment. This stops it retreating for free. We see 1 copy of Marshadow because, let's face it, right, it's Marshadow. puts your opponent down to a 4-card hand as well as yourself. If you can get a decent setup and drop a Marshadow, you can often end up winning the game from that position. We see 1 Tapu Lele, 1 Dedenne. They're your consistency cards. They're the things that you use here to make sure that you can set up. Now, there's no Mew to protect your bench, so do be exceedingly careful if you come up against a Pikachu and Zekrom, because their GX attack will KO a bench Dedenne or a Tapu Lele. So, I mean, watch yourself, would ya? And then we see 1 copy of Hooper, and this Hooper is finding its way into... I mean, honestly, it seems like the majority of really good Japanese decks are finding space to put one of these Hooper in. It's a basic Pokemon, and for a single colourless energy, you do a base 10 damage, plus an extra 20 for each of your opponent's Pokemon in play that have an ability. Simple as that. Except there's a whole bunch of Dedenne out there, and Jirachi out there, and honestly, this can often just give you a cheeky KO on some weaker Pokemon. Bearing in mind, this deck, you're really relying on GX Pokemon. In fact, Tag Team GX Pokemon. So honestly, if you're giving up free prizes with your main Pokemon, you can give up 2 single prize Pokemon like Hooper, and your opponent still has to take out 2 Tag Team GXs to win. I'm cool with this. So there's a lot of one-offs, a lot of tricks with the Pokemon line. You got free Reshiram and Charizard, free Jirachi, and then 2 consistency Pokemon and 4 1-card techs. But that's what it takes. Now, really, these decks work because of the fire tricks. So we've got a full 4 copies of Welder, attach 2 fire energy from your hand, draw 3 cards. Yes, that's phenomenal. Now, we also have a couple copies of Giant Furnace here. Giant Furnace lets you discard a card from your hand and then search your deck for 2 basic fire energy. It's Viridian Forest, except instead of any 1 energy, you get 2 specifically fire energy. And of course, you've got Fire Crystal, which does get a couple of basic fire energy from your discard pile into your hand. And it's a combination of Welder, Giant Furnace, and Fire Crystal, which really means that your engine can roll here. Now we're also playing 1 copy of Heat Factory Prism Star. Discard a fire energy from your hand, draw 3 cards, that's pretty good. And there's 3 copies of Kiawe here. Kiawe ends your turn. Ending your turn sucks, but you get to attach 4 energy to a Pokemon before you do so. Now, certainly if you go first and you're not able to attack anyway, you play this turn 1, and you've got a Reshiram and Charizard ready to go and hit for 230 minimum on turn 2, before you've attached for turn or whatever. That's pretty ridiculous. We're playing 3 of these. You're not going to want it in the mid-game. If you're having to play it in the mid-game, something's gone wrong. But it's there for an emergency, and it's there for the early game just to get you up and rolling. Now, we also see 1 copy of Professor Kukui. Draws 2 cards, but mostly it lets you do an extra 20 damage. That's fairly important for some particular matchups. For instance, against Pikachu and Zekrom, you're actually 10 damage short, so you need Choice Band or this. And then 3 copies of Guzma. That's it. 3 copies of Guzma. Drags Pokemon off the bench so you can KO them, acts as a switch, etc. You're not playing any traditional draw supporters here. How can we get away without any traditional draw supporters? Well, the answer there is easy. You're playing Welder, and that's by far the most important thing. Now you got 1 Tapu Lele, 1 Dedenne, but really, you want to be playing Welder every turn. And every turn you play something like a Cynthia is a turn you don't play something like a Welder, and that's a very bad thing indeed. Now, in terms of item cards here, we've got 4 copies of Ultra Ball, which searches out any of your Pokemon. We've got 1 copy of Nest Ball. Remember, Nest Ball doesn't let you use coming into play abilities like Dedenne, so that's why we can only really play 1 of them. And 3 copies of Cherish Ball. Cherish Ball lets you search for any GX Pokemon and put it into your hand. Yeah, it's really good. It won't get all your little non-GX text, but it will get a lot of the things that matter, and it will give you a whole bunch of consistency. 2 Choice Band for a bit of extra damage, as we've mentioned. 2 Escape Rope and 1 Switch. you're playing Jirachi. You need to keep getting Jirachi into the active. Although Escape Board will get it out of the active, you still need ways to get it into the active. But with your 2 Escape Board, 1 switch free Guzma, that'll give you a few options. 1 copy of Field Blower to get rid of your opponent's tools and stadiums. And 2 copies of Reset Stamp here. Now, generally speaking, we tend to see this as a one-off in decks in Japan. Here it's in there as a 2-off. Okay, little bit weird, but you just really want to be able to get it when you need it. The fact of the matter is, this puts your opponent down to a new hand equal to their remaining prizes. This can be the difference between winning or losing, especially when you fall behind in the game. It is a phenomenal card that really has transformed the Japanese metagame since it came out, and I see no reason why it won't continue to do so. And actually, we never mentioned the 3rd stadium here, as well as Giant Furnace and Heat Factory Prism Star. We're playing 2 copies of Power Plant. Turns off EX and GX abilities, so it turns off your Tapu Lele and Dedenne, but there are other decks that need EX and GX abilities way more than that, so just don't put it down when you want to use one of them. There, job's a good 'un. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. This is the best deck in Japan. This won Japan's championship, and frankly, I haven't got player numbers, but it's usually well over 1,000. This is a big deal. Reshiram and Charizard, even with the advent of what is the entirety of what will be our unified mindset, it's still the best deck in Japan, which means even when Unified Minds comes out over here, still likely to be the best deck over here. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's the best deck. I want to know what you think about it. Do you like this? Are you excited? Or would you rather we had a little bit more change? Go nuts in the comment section, but do please remember the rule. Be nice, would you? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter or the Wasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WasiPlays, where we talk about games that don't even have Pokemon in. We've just started covering the Final Fantasy TCG, so go check it out. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.